The battlefield hung silent, a graveyard of drifting hulls and shattered dreams suspended in orbit above the war-torn planet of Virex. Fires burned in a vacuum, impossibly persistent, fed by fuel cells that refused to extinguish. In the cold glow of nearby starlight, the broken carcass of an Eldarian dreadnought spun aimlessly, its once regal silhouette marred by Krell plasma scarring. The war was over in all but declaration. Everyone knew it. The Eldarian Alliance had lost. Zalera watched from the observation deck of the Elandra, her slender hands clasped behind her back, eyes unblinking. Her silver skin shimmered under the soft pulse of the console lights, and the long ridge of bioluminescent scales along her temples faded to a dull blue grief, barely restrained. Around her, officers moved like shadows, hesitant and subdued, awaiting orders that would not come. "They're assembling the council," said Vren, her second in command. His voice carried a tired cadence, the kind worn down by too many retreats and too few victories. "I know," Zalera replied, still staring into the void. "They'll discuss surrender." Vren didn't respond. What was there to say? The Krell forces had breached the outer colonies. The supply lines were gone. The fleet was shattered. Even the planetary defense grid of Virex had finally collapsed under the weight of the last siege. The only thing left intact was pride, and even that cracked under silence. When she entered the council chamber, the air was heavy with resignation. Eldarian leaders, once radiant in posture and voice, now slumped in their seats. High Chancellor Morel stood at the head, her voice clipped and formal. "We must face the truth," she began. "The Krell have offered terms. Conditional surrender, disarmament, planetary isolation, total withdrawal from the Galactic Council." Murmurs stirred, some angry, some weary. "They offer survival," Morel continued. "And I, for one, will not see our children die in the cold void of honor." Zalera stepped forward. Her voice, as always, was clear and firm. "And yet survival without freedom is no survival at all." "Would you have us fight with stones and words?" snapped General Korvek. "Our last cruisers are dust. The ardent spear was vaporized yesterday. There is nothing left." "Then we should make peace knowing we stood for something," she said, her gaze cutting to the chamber. Morel's expression softened, not with sympathy, but sorrow. "Zalera, your loyalty is unquestioned, but the war is lost. We will vote, and we will abide by the will of the Council." The vote was swift, overwhelming support for surrender. Zalera left the chamber with the weight of extinction pressing on her shoulders. Outside, stars bled to the darkness like watching eyes. Somewhere in that vast nothing, the Krell fleet loomed, patient, efficient, merciless. The kind of enemy that waited not to conquer, but to erase. That night, sleep evaded her. Instead, she stood alone in her private chamber, watching the live feed from the Virex perimeter sensors. Static flickered occasionally, the remnants of damaged satellites. Her mind wandered to ancient stories of unity, defiance, and impossible odds. Stories the young no longer told. Then something changed. The sensor feed glitched, not in its usual erratic pulse, but with a synchronized interference. Like a rhythm, lines of static morphed into shapes, then cleared, revealing an object. Massive, triangular, silent. It hovered at the system's edge, just beyond Krell space. Unidentified. Her fingers flew across the console. Vren answered her emergency signal groggily. "Vren, patch into orbital surveillance. Sector 9. Now!" Within moments, the screen stabilized. The ship was still there, unmoving. It wasn't Krell. It wasn't Eldarian. Its structure was too sleek, too precise, with edges carved as if from obsidian and light pouring from beneath its hull like veins of fire. "Is it broadcasting?" she asked. "No signals. No IFF codes. It's silent. Wake the Council. Now!" But before any orders could be transmitted, the unknown ship moved. With graceful menace, it drifted forward, breaching the sensor range of both Eldarian and Krell fleets. Defensive protocols initiated automatically, and warning sirens filled the Elandra. Zalera braced herself, expecting a preemptive strike, but none came. Instead, every Krell ship in range powered down. Not destroyed, disabled. Systems collapsed one by one in eerie unison. The feed cut again. 30 minutes later, the unknown vessel established a communications channel. A single message transmitted on all frequencies, the universal diplomatic code for contact. A face appeared on the screen. Human, female, pale skin, platinum hair cascading like silk, eyes a piercing steel gray. Her armor gleamed with technology unknown, its design functional yet regal. She spoke with measured calm. This is Admiral Seraphine Voss of the United Human Systems. We come not as conquerors nor saviors, but as witnesses. This war ends today. Terms will be issued shortly. And then the screen went black. The silence that followed was deafening. Humanity, the lost children of a spiral arm, once considered primitive, self-consuming, irrelevant. They had not been seen or heard from since the galactic exodus centuries ago. Legend said they fell into ruin, tore themselves apart before achieving unity. But this was not the image of a dying race. This was precision, power, intention. Vren reappeared on the bridge, breathless. Orders. Zalera's mind raced. Her instincts warned her. This was not a rescue. It was not benevolence. It was a move, a calculated step in a game they hadn't even known they were playing. We hold position, she said. Do not fire. Do not engage. Observe everything. Elsewhere, Krell forces scrambled, confused and leaderless. Their command ships floated, dark and inert. In under an hour, the balance of power had shifted with the arrival of a single vessel. The council convened once again, this time in fear, not despair. Morel's tone was shaky. Humanity, we didn't even know they still existed. They didn't want to be known, Zalera said, her voice like iron. And now they've chosen to be seen. They destroyed no one, another counselor added. No casualties. Their technology could have annihilated us. But they didn't. Yet, Zalera muttered. Vren leaned toward her later, in private. What do you think they want? She answered without hesitation. Leverage. Influence. Maybe something worse. But one thing certain, the war was about to end until humanity's battleship arrived. And as a Leviathan drifted silently into orbit above Virex, casting its shadow across the planet's scorched skies, one truth settled across the galaxy like a quiet storm. This was not the end. It was the beginning. The Leviathan moved without sound, a continent-sized dagger of obsidian steel cutting through the void. No visible engines flared. No energy signature betrayed its propulsion. And yet it glided effortlessly past the shattered remains of Krell warships, their systems still dead from the electromagnetic wave it had unleashed hours earlier. Silence had become its herald, and now the galaxy listened. Inside the command deck, light pulsed faintly from floor panels as Admiral Seraphine Voss observed the tactical holoarray, her arms folded behind her back. Her eyes, sharp and dispassionate, tracked every Eldarian fleet movement, every oscillation in Krell weapon systems, every minute fluctuation in the orbital path of Virex. There was no hesitation in her stance, only design. She did not come to weigh possibilities. She had arrived to execute inevitability. Status? She asked, voice crisp, not raised. Eldarian vessels remain on standby. They're not advancing. Krell fleet still dormant, replied Lieutenant Kale, his fingers dancing across the console, eyes wide with all he tried to conceal. Patched through to the Eldarian flagship. Secure channel. No translations. A moment later, the hollow display shifted, revealing the face of Zalera. Her posture was guarded, the faintest furrow above her brows betraying her mistrust. Her voice emerged, melodic yet tinged with steel. You've disabled an entire fleet in a single maneuver. Impressive. Terrifying. Are we to believe this was a gesture of peace? Seraphine regarded her with the calm of someone who had faced darker rooms and harder decisions. It was a gesture of warning. The conflict you cultivated here is no longer sustainable. You both exhausted your potential. Humanity has observed enough. It ends now. And who made you judge? Zalera asked. We did, because no one else had the vision or the reach to stop what you began. The call ended at Seraphine's discretion. She turned to her crew. Prepare for diplomatic boarding. will visit the Elandra within the hour. When a Leviathan shuttle breached the Eldarian flagship's hangar, it drew the attention of every officer aboard, not from its size, modest by comparison, but from the ominous hum that accompanied its descent. The hull shimmered faintly with adaptive light, and its landing gear barely kissed the deck before the hatch hissed open. Seraphine emerged with 3 officers at her side, each clad in armor so advanced it seemed to absorb the surrounding environment rather than reflect it. She removed her helmet, letting her platinum hair fall freely down her shoulders, and scanned the room with military precision. Zalera stood waiting, flanked by Vren in the silent tension of 100 Eldarian eyes. "You entered our system without permission," Zalera began. "Your borders cease to matter the moment your war threatens stability beyond them. And now you offer what? Alliance? Occupation." Seraphine stepped forward. "Neither. I offer an armistice, one enforced by presence alone. The Krell are crippled. Your council leans toward surrender. What happens next is entirely up to you." Zalera's gaze sharpened. "Why now? After centuries of absence? You watched us bleed and burn. Why act now? A beat passed." Seraphine didn't blink. "Because now the outcome is clear, and humanity only invests where return is assured." That answer stung, not for its brutality, but for its honesty. Zalera turned away, guiding Seraphine to the halls of the Elandra. Officers stepped aside with unease, unsure whether to view the human emissary as a savior or a storm in human skin. "You have power," Zalera said, her voice low. "But power without purpose is just spectacle. If you want influence, you'll need trust. And right now you have none." Seraphine tilted her head, watching her counterpart with the measured curiosity of a scientist regarding a volatile compound. "I don't seek trust. I seek cooperation. Temporary, if necessary. Mutual interests." "And what are your interests?" "Stability, access, presence." Seraphine smiled faintly, the closest she came to warmth. "A place at the table of whatever comes next." Later, in the council chamber, Seraphine stood before the Eldarian leaders. Morel's tone was wary but diplomatic. "We acknowledge the power of your ship, but what you propose is not peace. It is deterrence, suppression." Seraphine didn't argue. "Call it what you will, but the alternative is annihilation. Not by us, but by your own exhaustion. We simply ensure the final blow never lands." Morel studied her carefully, as though trying to divine truth from stone. "And the Krell? They will not resist again. Not after this demonstration." And they hadn't. The Leviathan had disabled every Krell vessel within a 10-light-year radius without firing a single kinetic weapon. Its interference protocols scrambled neural command networks, overloaded targeting systems, even rendered their cloaked reconnaissance drones inert. Krell generals had gone dark, and no new orders had surfaced. They were retreating not out of strategy, but fear. But beneath the calm, Zalera felt something shift. Seraphine had offered peace, but it was a peace enforced by awe. There are no negotiations, only the illusion of choice. Humanity had not returned to join the galaxy. It had returned to control the narrative. Hours later, alone in the dim glow of her private quarters, Zalera studied every piece of data they'd managed to extract about the Leviathan. No known signature, no prior records. Its technology defied understanding. Weapon systems that operated outside of known physics. Defensive barriers that adapted mid-impact. It was not just a warship. It was a statement. Vren entered, carrying a datapad. The Krell sent a message. Short, fragmented, likely panic. What did it say? He hesitated, then read aloud. "The humans do not want the war to end. They want it quiet, so they can rewrite it." Zalera leaned back, the words sinking in, across the stars, aboard the Leviathan. Seraphine sat in solitude, her armor peeled away, revealing the pale skin and scarred tissue beneath. In her hand, she held a recording, one from decades ago, showing Earth's decayed skyline, the poisoned air, the endless riots. A younger version of herself had sworn, through clenched teeth, that Earth would never beg again. Not from alien alliances, not from galactic courts. Never again. And now they didn't have to. The war, once teetering toward conclusion, now found itself suspended, not ended, not won, suspended, in the shadow of something older than both sides had expected, the silent will of the species reborn in fire. Back on Virex, the Leviathan's shadow stretched wider each day, not just over the cities and fleets below, but over the choices to come. In her chambers, Zalera closed her eyes and murmured a single truth to herself, heavy with foreboding. They didn't come to stop the war. They came to own the peace. And far above, the Leviathan waited, patient, unyielding, watching a galaxy that had just met its new reckoning. The Krell's silence became a roar louder than war. In the span of a week, their fleets withdrew from contested systems, leaving behind only fractured hulls and empty strongholds. Their movements were not strategic retreats. They were abandonments, desperate flights from something they had no language to define. Fear, for a species bred without it, had finally found a voice. Zalera stood before the Eldarian High Council once more, though the room felt different now. It wasn't the solemnity of defeat that pressed against the air, but something more disorienting, irrelevance. The war that had defined them was being folded away like a finished play. Curtains drawn not by the victors or the vanquished, but by a third party, one neither had invited. Humanity has imposed itself as guardian, Morel said, her voice even, but her fingers trembled where they curled around the edge of her lectern. Do we allow this peace to stand, knowing it was never ours to choose? They stopped the Krell, murmured another counselor. Without them, we'd be soil and memory. And do we thank the blade that pressed against our enemies' throats? Zalera said. Or do we wonder when it turns to us? The chamber fell quiet. The line between savior and sovereign had grown perilously thin. Outside the orbit of Virex, the Leviathan remained stationed, unmoving, unblinking. No demand were made, yet nothing escaped its notice. Trade routes were reestablished under its shadow. Diplomats moved cautiously, their transmissions monitored. Peace bloomed, but no one mistook it for freedom. Inside the warship's nerve center, Admiral Seraphine Voss sat before projection of the galactic frontier, observing. Her face was impassive, but her thoughts moved quickly, cycling through probabilities, contingencies, threats. She wasn't building an empire. Empires were loud, bloated, arrogant. She was constructing something quieter, sharper, an influence so total that resistance would dissolve before it began. A message interrupted her focus. Not encoded, not cloaked. A direct request from Zalera. Request, private dialogue. Physical presence. No escort. Seraphine read it twice, then nodded to Kale without speaking. 2 hours later, she entered the Elandra again, alone this time. The hangar welcomed her with the sterile chill of protocol, but no guards lined the walls. Zalera waited, dressed not in formal regalia but a plain uniform. Every inch of her a deliberate choice. They walked together down the long corridor toward the observation deck. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them felt like the negotiation itself. You don't trust us, Seraphine finally said. I don't know you, Zalera replied. That's not the same thing. No, she agreed, but it's a place to start. The deck opened into a wide, transparent dome. The stars framed them like witnesses, and below, Virex rotated with its slow, wounded grace. Seraphine approached the glass, her fingers clasped behind her back, a mirror of Zalera's pose days earlier. Tell me, Zalera said softly, what does Earth look like now? Seraphine didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was distant, ruined, rebuilt, beautiful in parts, savage in others, but no longer fragmented. What unified it? Necessity, Seraphine replied, and suffering. When the last resource war ended and the oceans were nearly gone, we had two choices, die in pieces or live as one. We chose unity, at any cost. And that cost brought you here. No, Seraphine said, turning to face her. That cost taught us what chaos looks like. What happens when no one stops the fall before the bottom. We learn to be the hand that intervenes. Zalera searched her eyes. Even uninvited? Seraphine didn't flinch, especially then. The two stood in silence again, but now it crackled with something alive. Mutual recognition, not of alliance, but of weight. They were commanders, survivors, both shaped by a lifetime of decisions that carved deeper than wounds. "There's unrest brewing," Zalera said. "Among my people, they don't fear war anymore. They fear irrelevance." Seraphine nodded. That was always the danger. "And if they act out? If a rogue commander tries to test your patience, then they'll learn we have none left." Zalera exhaled slowly. She had hoped for nuance, compromise, but Seraphine offered only clarity. And clarity, in times like these, was power. "What would it take," Zalera asked carefully, "for humanity to step back?" Seraphine turned her eyes to the stars again. "Nothing, because we won't." The truth hung there, undeniable. But she added, "What we will do is share. Influence can be wielded together, if handled with care." "You mean a coalition?" "I mean a new order, built not on treaties, but leverage. You've earned the right to have a seat, if you're willing to play a new kind of game." "And the Krell, they're done," Seraphine said. "They know it. You know it. This galaxy has moved on." Zalera studied the Admiral a moment longer, then gave the smallest of nods. Not agreement, but understanding. They parted without ceremony. Seraphine returned to Leviathan, where new orders waited. Quiet expansions of human presence in trade, technology, governance. Nothing overt. Nothing that would ignite resistance. Just slow, careful encroachment. That night, in her private chambers, Zalera opened a secure line to an unlisted channel. A deep voice answered, rough, distorted. "You said only if the humans became a threat." The voice growled. "They haven't threatened," Zalera said. "They've won. Quietly. Completely. And I need leverage. Something they don't expect." The voice was silent. Then, "There's something on Virex. Buried long ago. Pre-human. Pre-Krell. If they find it first. They won't." She ended the call. Outside, the stars glittered in false peace. And beneath Virex's scorched surface, something ancient stirred. The war had ended. The game had just begun. Virex's core pulsed with a rhythm older than recorded time. Buried beneath tectonic scars and fortified vaults lay a construct neither the Eldarian nor Krell had dared awaken. And yet now, with humanity's shadows spread across the stars, Zalera had begun to dig. She stood deep within the excavation site, flanked by silent engineers and guarded by elite operatives whose orders came only from her. The chamber walls were etched with non-Eldarian symbols, curved, recursive, alien even to the most advanced linguistic AIs. A sphere hovered at the center of the chamber, rotating slowly, its surface reacting to proximity with faint, indigo ripples. It was a machine, but it breathed like something alive. Zalera approached it with reverence and fear. She had gambled her position, her legacy, on a single whisper from an outlawed archive. That Virex had once been a node of something greater, a sentient network seeded across the galaxy eons before the current species rose from dust. Whatever it was, the humans hadn't found it yet, but if they did, they would not share it. "Activate the uplink," she ordered. A technician hesitated. "If it's truly sentient, it will recognize us, or it won't. But we can't afford silence anymore." The moment the uplink pulsed with energy, the sphere halted, its surface solidified, and then a voice, not spoken but felt, pierced every mind in the room. "Query, designation, origin, purpose?" Zalera's vision blurred. The voice wasn't language. It was comprehension, raw and direct. She steadied herself. "I am Zalera of the Eldarian. We seek understanding." "Insufficient. Clarify purpose." She paused, glancing at her team. "We seek to preserve our sovereignty, to survive what comes. Humanity." It was not a question. "Yes," she answered. A pause, then a soundless echo through the floor. "Humanity seeks order, control." They awakened echoes best left silent. "You are not prepared." Zalera stepped forward. "Then help us prepare." There was no answer. The sphere dimmed, its surface reverting to liquid shimmer. The uplink dropped. Hours later, aboard the Leviathan, Admiral Seraphine Voss reviewed a classified spike in electromagnetic activity beneath Virex's crust. A ripple in planetary interference grids had exposed something brief but significant. She tapped the table. Lieutenant Kale waited at attention. Analysis. Localized anomaly. Quantum data signature matches no known Eldarian tech. It wasn't theirs. Seraphine narrowed her eyes. They found something. Kale hesitated. If it's precursor tech, it could change the power structure. No, Seraphine said. It already has. She turned to the Central Command AI. Prepare planetary intervention protocol. Covert. No orbital shifts. That night, a team of human operatives descended onto Virex in silence. Cloaked, undetectable by native surveillance, they infiltrated the excavation perimeter. But they were too late. The sphere had vanished. Zalera watched them from a hidden vantage, her breath tight. They moved like phantoms, fast and efficient. No violence, no decorations. They simply searched, then left. She turned to her aide. They know they're losing control. What now? Now we move first. Aboard the Leviathan. Seraphine stood before her personal archive, a sealed chamber containing relics and classified data humanity had acquired in its silent ascension. She pulled up a simulation. The sphere, or at least what their records guessed it to be, the encephalon core. It was theorized to be a fragment of a galactic intelligence, scattered after its creators vanished. Its purpose was unknown, but its ability to interface with species' cognitive networks had been documented in 2 extinction-level encounters. Earth's council had forbidden any engagement with known cores. And now, the Eldarian had won. Seraphine locked the chamber, her face unreadable. She sent a direct transmission to Earth's High Command. No intermediaries. Subject, core activation confirmed. Recommend preemptive containment. Authorization requested. Back on Virex, Zalera stood within a command room hidden in the underlayers of her capital, staring at a new hologram. The core no longer hovered. It nested. Somehow, it had bound itself into a lattice of neural links that now formed the foundation of a new kind of intelligence. Not sentient in the biological sense, but reactive, learning, observing, evolving. It pulsed with light in response to her thoughts. We don't need to fight them, she whispered. We need to outgrow them. She began transmitting to remaining Eldarian systems. Quiet calls, encoded offers. Join her, or fade beneath humanity's growing reach. Seraphine watched those signals, intercepted from orbit. The Eldarian were mobilizing, not with weapons, but with ideas. Alliances were shifting. Worlds once neutral now leaned toward this new axis of influence. The core had become a symbol, a myth reborn. We should strike now, Kale said, before their support solidifies. No, Seraphine said. Striking would validate their fear and make martyrs of them. She closed the transmission feed, then stared at her reflection in the darkened viewport. The stars offered no answers. They rarely did. We dismantle it from within. Meanwhile, on the fringes of Eldarian space, a figure moved in the void. Neither human nor Eldarian. It drifted toward a relay beacon once used by Krell scouts. It had no ship, no heat signature. Only a core of light nestled in its chest, pulsing in sync with the newly awakened sphere. It had heard the call. Across the galaxy, things ancient and forgotten began to stir. Back on Virex, Zalera stood before the core as its light flickered faster, now pulsing with rhythm and intent. She reached out. We're ready, she said. The core responded with silence. And then a voice, impossibly old, yet born in that instant, spoke only to her mind. Then become what must be. The chamber brightened, and everything began to change.